You say you want more, you dream big, you talk like you're hungry. But when the moment comes to bleed for it, to sacrifice, to shut off comfort and move like your life depends on it, you vanish. That's why you're stuck. Not because the dream is too big, but because your discipline is too small. You've been sold the idea that wanting it is enough. That visualization will carry you. That passion can replace execution. That mindset will do the lifting for you. That's a lie. And that lie is why your goals stay dreams. Napoleon Hill said, "A goal is a dream with a deadline." But most men never meet the deadline. Not because they can't, but because they refuse to pay the price. They want the rewards of the mountain, but sleep at the base. They want the view, but not the climb. They want the crown, but not the war. And when the pain starts, when the work stacks, when the excitement fades, they fold. They convince themselves the timing's wrong, the plan's broken, or worse, that the dream was unrealistic. No, the dream is fine. Your standard is broken. The brutal truth: you don't really want the goal if you're not willing to change for it, if your habits stay soft, if your words don't match your work, if your energy disappears when sacrifice shows up. That's not ambition, that's delusion, and delusion kills more potential than failure ever will. You keep saying you want to win, but you're not building a life that supports the win. You want elite results while living average routines. You want massive outcomes with part-time effort. That gap is where self-destruction hides, because every time you promise change and don't deliver, you break your own belief. Napoleon Hill wrote that desire backed by faith is the starting point of all achievement. But faith without works is fantasy. You don't just desire the goal, you build the man required to hold it. And that building doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in sacrifice. It happens in isolation. It happens when no one is clapping and you're still pushing, still showing up, still choosing discipline when every part of you wants to drift. Let's get painfully clear. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. And if those systems aren't engineered for war, for repetition, for total internal alignment, you'll sabotage every breakthrough you claim to want. So here's your reset. From this point forward, dreaming is not enough. Declaring is not enough. You will now tie every goal to daily behavior. You will now measure desire in hours, not words. You will now look in the mirror and ask, did I move today? If not, you don't deserve the win. Let's break the cycle. You've been high on vision, but low on volume. You journal, you affirm, you talk with passion. But the actual execution, inconsistent. And inconsistency is a form of disrespect to the dream, to the process, to yourself. That ends now, because now you tie your identity not to emotion, but to effort, not to hype, but to habits. You no longer care how you feel. You care what you finish. You don't wake up hoping for motivation. You wake up with commands, with structure, with non-negotiables. Napoleon Hill taught that definiteness of purpose is the first principle of success. That definiteness is proven not in how you speak, but in how you structure your day. You now make your goals the loudest voice in your life, not your friends, not your fears, not your feelings. Let's talk about sacrifice. Sacrifice is not just what you give up. It's what you choose to go without, willingly, violently, daily, because the mission demands it. You sacrifice comfort for clarity. You sacrifice distraction for momentum. You sacrifice approval for results. You sacrifice convenience for completion. And here's the paradox. The more you sacrifice, the freer you become, because now your life is aligned. Your actions echo your ambition. Your time reflects your targets. But sacrifice isn't romantic. It's brutal. It's the night you don't go out, the morning you wake before the sun, the reps you hit when sore, the hours you work when tired, the emotions you shut down when doubt tries to speak. You don't do it because it feels good. You do it because you said you would. That's the man who achieves, not the one with vision boards, the one who shows up without applause, who builds when no one's watching, who finishes what he starts. And when you live like that, something shifts. You stop needing results to stay disciplined. You become disciplined, and the results chase you. Because the game has changed. You're not trying anymore. You're not hoping anymore. You're executing. You're refining. You're repeating. And every repetition is proof that this time it's different. Because this time you're not depending on hype. You're depending on structure, on force, on internal fire that doesn't fade when the day gets hard. This is how real goals are achieved. Not with inspiration, with immersion, not with comfort, with chaos management, not with waiting, with walking, daily, deliberately, without negotiation. So when the dream shows up, you're not surprised. You're not overwhelmed. You're not wondering, can I handle it? You already became the man who could. In silence, in sacrifice, in structure. That's how you achieve goals. Not by dreaming bigger, but by acting sharper. And the sharper you move, the more undeniable you become. Let them talk. Let them doubt. Let them sleep. You build. Because your dream, it's no longer a possibility. It's a plan. And you will not stop until it's done. You've accepted the truth. Your goals don't care about your feelings. Your dreams will not wait for you to become consistent. Now that you've faced the cost of success, discipline, structure, sacrifice, the next layer is to install the mindset that makes it permanent. Because without the right mental foundation, every plan, every habit, every early morning will crumble under pressure. And pressure will come, setbacks will come, discomfort will come. The only thing that can't come is collapse. Not anymore. You're done being reactive. You're done being emotional. You are building something now. Not a routine, not a schedule, a frame, a psychological fortress where your mission lives, untouched by doubt, unmoved by circumstances. Napoleon Hill said, "Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. But belief without backbone is delusion. You can't just believe in the outcome. You have to become the type of man who holds it without shaking. And to do that, you must develop a mindset that doesn't flinch. You've flinched before. You've quit before. You've let tiredness and judgment and delay decide your pace. That version of you was emotional. That version was soft. He lived based on moods, feedback, convenience. He's dead now. You're no longer asking, what should I do when it gets hard? You're asking, who must I be so that hard doesn't change a thing? This is the mindset of men who win. They don't get motivated, they get forged. They don't wait to feel powerful. They train it until power becomes their base state. Let's define this new identity. You are now a man who moves regardless. You execute whether tired or rested. You show up whether it's raining or clear. You act whether praised or ignored. You build whether seen or alone. Your emotions are no longer the compass. Your values are. Your identity is. Your standard is. From now on, everything passes through one question. Does this match the man I said I am? And if it doesn't, it's dead. The thought, the excuse, the action. It all dies at the gate of your new self-image. You no longer say, I want to achieve. You say, I don't stop. You say, I build. You say, I show up. These aren't slogans. These are laws. Napoleon Hill's philosophy wasn't about hype. It was about programming, about getting so clear on your identity, your vision, your rules, that doubt becomes impossible. Not because things go right, but because you never stop when they go wrong. This is what unshakable means. Not that you don't feel, but that you've trained so ruthlessly that your action is no longer tied to emotion. You don't act when it's convenient. You act because it's who you are now. That's the shift. That's the death of weakness. That's how you protect your goals from sabotage. Because the mind that is anchored in identity does not collapse under pressure. You've likely spent too long trying to feel ready. waiting for alignment, hoping for clarity. That's over. You're done seeking. You're done planning. You're now executing on identity. Let's reinforce this. You write your code daily. You say it. You live it. You become it. I am focused. I am silent. I am consistent. I am dangerous. I finish. You say it until every cell obeys. You look in the mirror, not for motivation, but for confirmation. That man keeps his word. You train your thoughts like a soldier. If a thought doesn't build, it gets removed. You don't rehearse fear. You don't play out failure. You don't visualize quitting. You visualize force, movement, pressure absorbed and redirected. And when doubt shows up, you smile, not because it's welcome, but because it reminds you that you're close. Doubt doesn't visit the stagnant. It visits the rising. Napoleon Hill said, "Strength and growth come only through continuous effort and struggle." That means struggle is now your ally. It's not a sign to stop. It's a signal to double down. So when the day sucks, you move. When the motivation dies, you move. When no one claps, you move. Because you don't need the world to confirm your path. You've confirmed it with action, and that action becomes your identity. That identity becomes your power. That power becomes your lifestyle. And that lifestyle produces the man who doesn't just chase goals. He completes them, not with noise, with focus, not with hype, with habit, not with public praise, with private victories. This is your new truth. You don't get shaken, you don't react, you don't collapse. You continue. You've set the identity, you've declared who you are. But now comes the real test, the moment the world hits back, because it will. Distractions, delays, criticism, emotional spikes, and in those moments, your progress won't be determined by how strong your plan is, but by how well you control your reaction. Because when your mind breaks under pressure, your mission is dead. Not from failure, from emotion, from flinching, from letting the external world override your internal system. That ends here. From this point forward, your reaction becomes your responsibility, not your mood, not your environment, yours. Because goals aren't lost in strategy, they're lost in seconds. Seconds where you respond wrong. Seconds where you speak from pain instead of power. Seconds where you quit when all you had to do was breathe. Napoleon Hill said, "You have absolute control over just one thing, your thoughts." Under that truth, it's the foundation of everything, and yet most men surrender that control the moment pressure rises. They react without awareness, they speak without discipline, they move based on emotion, not mission. You are no longer one of them. You've already declared who you are. Now you reinforce that identity through calm, calculated command of your mind. Let's get brutally specific. The world will test you. Not once, not occasionally, constantly. That's what life does to men chasing real goals. It pushes, it interrupts, it insults, and every time it does, you are given one decision. Will I react or will I respond? Reaction is instinctual. Response is intentional. Reaction is emotional. Response is strategic. Reaction is sabotage. Response is structure. Most of your setbacks didn't come from a bad plan. They came from a bad moment, a trigger that led to a reaction that cost you days, weeks, even years of progress. You were disciplined until someone doubted you. You were focused until a distraction hit. You were consistent until stress knocked. That's not failure. That's a system breach. And now we patch the system. Step 1, awareness. You identify the triggers that pull you into reaction. Stress, criticism, fatigue, fear. You name them, you write them. You don't ignore them, you prepare for them. Step 2, breath. When the moment comes, you don't react fast. You pause, you breathe, you buy space. That space is your power. In that pause, you recenter. You ask, what would the man I said I am do right now? Step 3, redirection. You replace the emotion with the mission. You remind yourself of the reason, of the outcome. You don't feed the trigger, you feed the target. Step 4, movement. Action dissolves emotion. The moment you feel the storm, you move, physically, mentally. You do something that aligns with your goal. You don't sit in the spiral, you interrupt it. Step 5, review. You log every emotional breach, not with guilt, with strategy. What triggered it? What did I think? What will I do next time? You refine your system daily. This isn't emotional suppression. This is emotional warfare. You don't bury feelings, you lead them. You don't fake calm, you forge it. Napoleon Hill didn't say avoid emotion. He said control it, redirect it, use it. He knew the mind is a tool, not a tyrant. You don't let your mind dictate direction. You give it orders, and it follows. This is elite behavior. Most men react to everything. You react to nothing. You observe, you assess, you execute, and that discipline becomes your edge. Because now, when life shakes most men, it sharpens you. Where they flinch, you breathe. Where they pause, you move. Where they explain, you act. You become the man who moves clean under fire, whose energy is stable, whose words are chosen, whose decisions are never emotional, only effective. Let's engrave your new mental code. I don't react. I respond. I don't explain. I execute. I don't spiral. I assess. I don't collapse. I convert. Every time emotion knocks, I open the door with logic. And the longer I do this, the stronger the muscle becomes. Until eventually, triggers don't trigger anymore. Storms don't move me. Noise doesn't reach me. Because I've trained for this. I've chosen this. I've become this. The man who reacts is owned by his surroundings. The man who responds owns them. You now own them. And your goals, they're no longer at the mercy of moods. They're protected, locked in, unshakable, just like you. You've trained your reactions. You no longer fold under pressure. But now comes the next level. The upgrade that separates focused builders from emotional amateurs, learning what to ignore. Because the world won't stop trying to distract you. It won't stop baiting you with emotional traps, irrelevant noise, and invisible thieves of your focus. And if you don't master indifference, not coldness, not apathy, but strategic detachment, your mission will bleed out in 1,000 directions. Let's get something straight. Not everything deserves your energy. Not every comment deserves your attention. Not every conflict needs your voice. Not every update requires your opinion. And if you don't build the ability to stay locked on what actually matters, you will be hijacked, emotionally, mentally, and physically. Napoleon Hill said that a key to achievement is concentration of effort and the habit of definite decision. Strategic indifference is how you protect that concentration. It's how you say, this is what matters, and everything else is irrelevant. Because let's be honest, most of your setbacks didn't come from failure. They came from diversion. You let yourself get pulled into drama, into gossip, into comparison, into pleasing, into defending, into explaining, into cycles that produced no result but left you drained. That's not how leaders move. That's not how goals are achieved. From now on, you stop trying to manage everything. You stop trying to prove everything. You stop trying to respond to everyone. You're no longer in the business of chasing approval. You're in the business of building outcomes. Let's define what strategic indifference looks like in your life. It's choosing silence when noise is expected. It's letting people be wrong about you without correcting them. It's hearing criticism and not internalizing it. It's watching chaos and not entering it. It's receiving invitations to distraction and not responding. This is what makes you dangerous. Because now your attention is weaponized. You don't give it freely. You don't let it wander. You direct it with force, with clarity, with commitment. Napoleon Hill taught that auto-suggestion, repeated with emotion, reprograms the subconscious mind. But if your subconscious is constantly infected with emotional reactions to things that don't matter, you're building a weak operating system. One based on noise, not discipline. So you train differently now. You create protocols. When someone criticizes, you listen without response. You extract data, discard emotion. When someone misunderstands, you don't rush to clarify. You keep moving. When a situation doesn't go your way, you adjust without panic. When something offends you, you ask, does this build the mission? If not, you drop it. You are not emotionless. You are efficient. You don't suppress. You select. You don't bury. You filter. You are now the guardian of your energy, because energy is not infinite. And every time you waste it reacting to things beneath you, you delay the life above you. Let's create your new system. Every morning you review your essential three. The three things that move the mission. Anything outside of them, noise. Throughout the day you ask, does this require my presence, my reaction, my explanation? If the answer is no, you walk. You build a no-response list. People, platforms, situations that no longer get your reaction. You enforce it without apology. You track emotional leaks. You journal every night. Where did I give attention that didn't earn it? Then you course correct. And slowly, you become untouchable. Not because the world stopped shouting, but because you stopped listening. This is what unshakable men do. They don't just act with discipline, they protect that discipline from decay. You are now that man. And your presence changes rooms, not because of what you say, but because of what you no longer respond to. They won't understand at first. Your silence will confuse them. Your lack of reaction will offend them. Your refusal to engage will provoke them. Let it. You're not here to manage emotions. You're here to finish missions. So when the world asks, why don't you respond? You say nothing, because your results will answer. You've built indifference to the noise. You've trained your focus. But now comes the test that breaks most men, the voice that cuts deeper than silence, criticism. It doesn't hit you like a punch, it gets inside like a whisper. And if your mindset isn't fortified, it won't just distract you, it'll dismantle you, slowly, quietly, until the mission starts to feel uncertain, until the doubt starts to sound like truth, until you begin questioning the very thing you once believed in with fire. Criticism is one of the fastest ways to sabotage your goals, not because it's true, but because it speaks to the parts of you that aren't fully locked in, the pieces of your identity still under construction, the shadow of insecurity you haven't faced. Napoleon Hill said, "Opinions are the cheapest commodities on earth." And still, most men pay everything for them. Their time, their confidence, their drive, their direction. They hear one negative voice and it outweighs 100 days of discipline. One judgment and they pause momentum. One sarcastic line and they water down their vision just to avoid discomfort. That ends here. From this point forward, you are no longer available for criticism from people who aren't building what you're building. You don't need feedback from the unfocused. You don't need direction from the distracted. You don't need approval from the unqualified. Criticism only matters when it comes from someone who's paid the same price or more. Otherwise, it's just background noise. And your mission is too important to be managed by background noise. But here's the truth most men avoid. Criticism only hurts when it echoes a belief you secretly hold. That's the internal war. They say, you're going too hard. You think, maybe I am. They say, you've changed. You think, should I slow down? That hesitation, that pause, that crack, that's the beginning of sabotage. You stop that at the root. You train your mind to respond to criticism the way a warrior responds to wind. He notices it, adjusts, and keeps moving. You don't stop. You don't explain. You don't perform. You build. Let's get tactical. You audit every voice in your environment. Who gets access to your thoughts, your strategy, your routines? If they haven't earned the right to speak into your life, they lose that right. Immediately. You classify feedback. Criticism from those behind you is discarded. From peers, considered with logic. From mentors, reviewed with discipline. You never absorb anything blindly. You track your emotional spikes. If a comment cuts you, you don't react. You reflect. What part of me agreed with that? Why? What truth do I need to reinforce? You rehearse your belief system daily. This is who I am. This is where I'm going. Their voice does not determine my value. My action confirms my path. You lead with silence. You stop correcting people's view of you. You let your results speak. You let your consistency redefine misunderstanding. You don't run from criticism. You outlast it. Napoleon Hill taught that every adversity carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. Criticism is that adversity. It's the flame that can burn you or refine you. You choose. And your choice is this. You turn criticism into fuel. You turn judgment into silence. You turn disrespect into execution, because you're not here for approval. You're here for achievement. And achievement doesn't come to the loudest. It comes to the most locked in, to the man who keeps moving when mocked, to the man who stays sharp when questioned, to the man who's too focused to hear doubt. You are now that man. And your mission? It gets louder in silence. It gets sharper through criticism. It gets clearer through rejection. Because every critic becomes a marker, a line you step over, a reminder that you're not building for them, you're building for war. So when they talk, you build. When they laugh, you build. When they try to pull you back, you build. And when they finally see what you've created, you say nothing, because your work now answers every critic before your voice does. Talk less, do more. This is where average men fall, and the unbreakable ones are born. You already understand, criticism doesn't move you. Opinions don't guide you. But now comes the final separator, the silence. Not the silence of avoidance, the silence of control, the silence of the man who knows that noise weakens, but presence builds. You want to know why most people never make it? Because they talk too much, they explain too much, they anticipate too much, they post too much, they show too much. Meanwhile, the men who are truly dangerous, they work in silence. Napoleon Hill made it clear, tell no one your plans, work in silence, and let your results make the noise. That's the weapon. That's the edge. That's the code. The louder you are, the more exposed you become. More vulnerable, more pressured, more susceptible to ego. Ego is the silent enemy. It wants applause before achievement, recognition before proof, spotlight before consistency. But you don't play that game anymore. You're in the real game, the inner game, the game where only one sound matters, the sound of progress. And progress is silent. You don't announce your discipline. You don't broadcast your pain. You don't share every step. You move like a ghost toward the impossible. They ask, what are you working on? You smile and go back to work. They tease, why did you disappear? You stay quiet and build. They laugh, you've changed. You ignore and evolve. Because now, silence is your statement, your operating mode, your new language. You don't need them to know, you need them to feel it. And they will feel it. They'll feel your growth in absence, your dominance without announcement, your consistency without an audience. Because real power isn't loud, it's undeniable. It enters the room before you speak. It shifts the air without a single word. And how do you build that silence? With rituals, with routines, with sleepless nights and applauseless mornings, with goals you don't post, with plans you don't share, with decisions you don't justify. You pull back, not out of arrogance, but out of clarity. You disappear, not from pride, but from mission. You go quiet, not from fear, but from focus. This is the secret of masters, of leaders, of conquerors. They vanish. And when they return, the world is different, not because the world changed, but because they came back unrecognizable, stronger, colder, more lethal. And you will become that man. Starting today, you shut the doors. You cancel the announcements. You kill the need for validation. You operate in the dark, and in the dark, you grow. Napoleon Hill said, "Most people fail not from lack of ability, but from speaking before acting." You do the opposite. You act, then stay silent, then act again, and only speak when the work is complete. Let's reinforce. Silence protects. It protects your plan. It protects your energy. It protects your mind. It protects your identity. No one sabotages what they can't see. No one blocks what they don't understand. No one interferes with what you don't share. This is how conquerors move. They don't provoke. They don't defend. They don't compete. They dominate in silence. You're no longer the talker, you're the executor. You're no longer the speechmaker, you're the finisher. And when they ask, "What are you up to?" you respond with action, with a completed project, with an undeniable result. And if they ask again, you respond with more silence, more focus, more domination. Because now their noise is just that, noise, and your silence. It's the sound of victory being built. You are becoming unreachable, unshakable, untouchable. And it all begins the moment you decide not to speak, but to build. Pressure is not the enemy. It's the environment where champions are forged and the weak are exposed. The question isn't if pressure will come, it's how you respond. You've trained your identity, you've learned to silence noise, but pressure is a different beast. Pressure doesn't knock, it breaks in, unexpected, relentless, personal. And if you're untrained, it'll bend you, but you're not bending, you're not flinching. Because from this moment forward you choose a new standard, calm in the storm, control in the chaos, command under fire. Napoleon Hill said, "Every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit." Pressure is that adversity. It's the revealer of men. When the day breaks bad, when the plan collapses, when the people betray, when the unexpected hits, most men panic. Most men spiral, but not you. You anchor, you stabilize. Because panic is the reflex of the unprepared, but calm, that's the signature of a man who's been through fire and trained for the next one. Calm is earned. It's earned in the morning routine you didn't skip, in the reps you did when exhausted, in the nights you worked while others scrolled. That's where calm is built. You've seen it. The leader who doesn't yell when things go wrong. The warrior who breathes slow while chaos erupts. That's not a gift. That's a decision backed by training. You are now that man. You move slow when others rush. You speak low when others shout. You think clear when others collapse. And because of that, you lead. Let's break this down. Pressure comes in many forms. Deadlines, criticism, betrayal, confusion, delays, rejection. And every one of them is a test. Not of your plan, but your presence. You don't need more motivation. You need more stillness. Stillness is not inaction. It's lethal composure. It's controlled violence. It's a storm inside that never spills outside. You master pressure through preparation. The more prepared you are, the less you fear the hit. You've already rehearsed the worst. So when it comes, you move through it. You also master it through breath. The oldest weapon in history, your breath. Under attack, you don't rush. You inhale deep, exhale slow. You reclaim control in seconds. That's your first line. Next, you shift focus. Pressure tries to shrink your perspective. It makes the moment feel final, permanent, total. But you expand, you zoom out, you say, "This is a dot, not the story." Then you act. You don't sit, you don't overthink. You take one step, then another. Movement beats panic, always, because momentum restores control faster than thought. You also build rituals for pressure. You pre-decide how to respond. When chaos hits, you don't improvise, you execute. When I'm overwhelmed, I breathe, write, move. That becomes your command sequence. And finally, you review. Pressure will hit again. So after the storm, you log it. What happened? What worked? What cracked? You train for the next one before it hits. This isn't about pretending things don't affect you. It's about deciding they won't control you. You feel, but you don't flinch. You notice, but you don't break. That's power. Power isn't loud, it isn't fast. It's composed, grounded, deep-rooted. And that power makes you untouchable. Not because life gets easier, but because you no longer collapse when it doesn't. Napoleon Hill emphasized definiteness of purpose as the first step towards success. But definiteness means nothing if it disappears when life gets heavy. You're done being situational, you're now solid. You used to fold when people shifted. You used to stress when the schedule changed. You used to panic when things felt out of control, but not anymore. You're different. Now you control what you can and release what you can't. You don't fight reality, you master your response to it. That's dominance. That's maturity. That's why you'll win. Let's reinforce this with code. Every man needs a mental code for pressure. Yours begins now. I do not panic, I do not rush, I respond with structure. I breathe before I speak. I pause before I decide. I move before I explain. I am calm, not because life is easy, but because I am trained. That's your new operating system. You repeat it, you install it, until even under attack, you access it without thought. That's what separates good from unshakable. And the truth is this, pressure isn't personal, it's universal. Everyone gets hit, but very few train for the hit. Very few build systems. Very few upgrade their tolerance. You're not just increasing discipline, you're increasing durability, mental durability, emotional durability, psychological resistance. That's how elite goals get achieved. Not through ease, but through extreme mental strength. You start to welcome pressure, not because it feels good, but because it sharpens you, it cleans you, it burns away the weak layers and leaves only the weapon. You don't dread breakdowns, you use them. You don't complain about chaos, you grow through it. You see every test as training and every reaction as a mirror. Let's engrave your composure protocol. When pressure rises, I go quiet. I breathe. I move. I do not speak weakness. I speak decisions. I don't seek pity. I seek order. I reduce the moment to its core. I act on what I control. I surrender what I can't. I never spiral. I never delay. I never retreat. That's the kind of power that outlasts competition. That's the kind of mental strength that Napoleon Hill referred to when he said success comes to those who become success. And success is calm. Success is composed. Success doesn't yell, it walks in, handles it, and walks out with the win. That's you now. You don't make scenes, you make moves. They won't understand at first. Your calm will confuse them. Your silence will provoke them. Your stability will expose their instability. Let it. That's the price of leadership. Because real leaders don't need to prove strength. They radiate it. They don't chase control. They carry it. And that presence built through fire cannot be faked. You've earned it. Through discipline, through structure, through relentless self-control. You're not here to manage chaos. You're here to dominate from within it. So let the pressure rise. Let the world test you. Let the noise build. You've already built deeper, stronger, quieter. You don't fear storms. You are the storm. You've learned to stay calm under pressure. You've trained your reaction, mastered your breath, and fortified your mind. But now comes the next level of dominance, detachment. Because even the strongest men fall, not from lack of action, but from trying to control what was never theirs. And that obsession is the silent killer of progress. You can have world-class discipline and still collapse if your energy is tied to the uncontrollable. Results, timing, reactions, external opinion, all of them are variables, not constants, not yours. And Napoleon Hill warned, no man can succeed in a line of endeavor which he does not like. Why? Because liking means alignment, and you can't align with chaos. Let's break it down. There are only two forces in your life, what you command and what you don't. The wise man draws a hard line between the two. He knows what belongs to him. His effort, his mindset, his movement, his habits. And what doesn't? People's approval, the timeline, the circumstances, the outcomes. He detaches with precision. You must do the same. Because the moment you anchor your peace to results, you lose it. The moment you chase external validation, you hand over your power. You used to think success was control. Control over the outcome, control over people, control over the future. That illusion cost you focus. Now you abandon it forever. You now define power differently. Control over yourself, over how you think, over how you respond, over how you move forward when nothing goes as planned. That is freedom. Freedom is not in domination. Freedom is in detachment. Not emotional detachment, but strategic separation from what doesn't belong in your hands. You drop the weight that's not yours. Let's get tactical. Every time frustration hits, you pause. Ask, is this mine to command? If yes, move with force. If no, release instantly. Do not carry what you don't control. You're not here to manage everything. You're here to master your lane, your energy, your standard, your code. The more focused you become, the more dangerous you get. Because now, nothing pulls you off track. Not opinions, not delays, not detours. You stay on mission, regardless of how loud the storm gets around you. You've disconnected the wire. You've disconnected from the addiction to outcome. You no longer need the win to stay disciplined. You no longer need applause to execute. You move because it's who you are, and that identity is what makes you lethal. Because while others are waiting for results to feel powerful, you already are. You already decided. You already detached from everything external. You still want the goal, but you don't chase it with anxiety. You pursue it with peace, because you know the only thing guaranteed is your work. Let's go deeper. When people betray you, you don't fight to control their actions. You sharpen yours. When time runs against you, you don't panic. You double down on routine. When plans fall apart, you don't argue with reality. You shift. You adapt. You let go of the version that died and build the next one. Instantly. Without drama. That's real resilience, not bouncing back, evolving without resistance, transitioning without tears, building again faster, clearer, stronger. That's the kind of detachment that makes legends. You're not attached to how it should go. You're devoted to what you can do. And that difference, that's what makes you untouchable. That's what turns goals into facts. Let's craft your new internal script. I own my thoughts, I own my actions, I do not own opinions. I do not chase outcomes, I move in truth. I release what I can't direct. I double down on what I can. I don't argue with what's outside. I conquer what's inside. You say this until it replaces your reflexes, because the old reflex, the need to control everything, that's gone. It cost too much. It distracted you. It slowed you down. It turned your mission into emotional labor. Never again. You are now surgical with your energy. You don't pour it into conversations that go nowhere, into explanations that change nothing, into resistance that only drains. You preserve your fire. Napoleon Hill taught that concentration of effort is critical to success. But concentration is impossible without detachment. You can't focus fully if part of your mind is clinging to results. You can't build like a warrior if you're waiting on applause. You can't execute with excellence if your emotions depend on how things should be. You're done with that game. You now rise without feedback. Move without permission. Build without needing it to look perfect. You operate on one law. If it's mine, I master it. If it's not, I release it. And in that release, you unlock maximum control. Because now, all your energy returns to where it belongs. You, not them, not it. Not someday, now, here, your hands. They'll say you've changed, that you're colder, that you care less. But they're wrong. You don't care less, you care clearer. You've simply stopped chasing what was never yours. You don't demand certainty. You create momentum. You don't argue with outcomes. You build through action. That's why your goals will outlive their noise. That's why you'll reach the peak alone. Because while they argued, you acted. While they clung, you released. While they waited, you executed. And that separation, that's what made you elite. So when the next storm hits, you don't flinch. You don't chase control. You ask one question. What is mine to command? You act on that and let the rest burn. You do not need life to align perfectly. You only need your effort to stay aligned. And when it does, results bend toward you, not the other way around. Because now you're not attached to what happens. You're attached to who you are when it happens. And that version of you, he doesn't need control. He becomes it. You've released what you can't control. You've detached from the noise. Now comes the ultimate power move. The act of execution without announcement, moving in silence, building in darkness. This is where most men expose themselves. They start winning internally and they rush to broadcast. They talk about their goals before they're built. They speak their moves into the wind, but not you. You don't talk about what you're building. You become it. You don't describe your next step. You walk it. Alone, unannounced, and undeniable. That's the new standard. Napoleon Hill warned, "Tell the world what you intend to do, but first show it." Most skip that order. They speak, then delay. They post, then procrastinate. They hype, then vanish. You're done with that cycle. Because you know, the more you speak, the less you move. The more you reveal, the more vulnerable you become. The more noise, the less dominance. You've trained in silence. Now you execute in it. And this silence is not fear. It's force. It's discipline. It's the refusal to hand your power to anyone else's opinion, because every time you talk about what you haven't done, you lower your standard. You create emotional comfort where there should be tension. You let validation replace production. That kills progress. From now on, your metric is different. You don't measure progress by feedback. You measure it by finish lines, by completed work, by actual output, by how hard you hit, not how loud you shout. Let's get tactical. You set goals, and you keep them hidden, not secret but sacred, protected. Because sacred things don't need public approval, they need private commitment. That's the difference. You move like the old world assassins, quiet, trained, lethal, no movement wasted, no word unmeasured. You don't announce, you advance, you don't discuss, you dominate. In silence, people will ask, "What are you working on?" You say nothing, not because you're afraid, but because you're focused. They'll think you're avoiding. You're not. You're absorbing, building, positioning, because energy leaks through conversation. Energy disperses when shared prematurely. You've chosen containment. You've chosen focus. You've chosen the path of elite production. And that path is paved with silence. You don't post the workout, you do it. You don't record the discipline, you live it. You don't flaunt the progress, you multiply it. While they speak, you stack. This is psychological warfare. Most men need permission to act. You need none. Most men need praise to continue. You need none. Most men need attention to feel progress. You've outgrown that. You move in silence because your commitment is loud enough. You don't convince. You construct. You don't argue. You build. And when the world finally sees, it's too late to stop you. Napoleon Hill taught that auto-suggestion. The repeated message to the subconscious is how belief is formed. But if your message is always external, it never roots internally. You've reversed that. You no longer seek belief from the outside. You've coded it inside. And that internal code says, my work is sacred, my vision is silent, my results will speak for me. Let's build your system. You create a private war room, digital or mental, where your goals live, where your metrics are tracked, where your progress is logged. But it's for you, no audience. You remove public timelines. You stop announcing launches. You stop forecasting breakthroughs. You let things break through by force, not forecast. That's how you reclaim your mental leverage. You embrace misdirection. You let people assume you're inactive. You let them forget. You let them doubt. Meanwhile, you build in the shadows, quietly, ruthlessly, without pause. You set your own pace, not the speed of hype, the speed of discipline, the rhythm of execution. That tempo, it's yours now. No one rushes you. No one slows you. You track movement, not motivation. You log results, not reactions. You measure internal alignment, not external applause. That calibration, that precision, is what makes your silence so powerful. And the longer you stay silent, the louder your outcome becomes. Because they won't see the preparation, they won't see the struggle, they won't see the nights you bled for this, but they will see the result. And by then, it's non-negotiable, it's undeniable, it's already done. And you didn't need a stage, you needed a system. This is your edge now. Silence, not just as a tactic, but as a lifestyle, a philosophy, a filter. If it distracts, it dies. If it leaks energy, it's cut. If it doesn't build, you don't touch it. You live by a new code. Speak only when complete. Reveal only when refined. Share only when it's already won. Until then, work, move, stack. Alone. You don't shrink in silence. You expand. You refine. You become. Because while they debate, you develop. While they explain, you evolve. While they announce, you attack. And your attack is quiet, clean, calculated. That's what makes it lethal. They can't prepare for what they don't see. They can't block what they don't hear. You've become invisible. Invisible doesn't mean absent. It means unstoppable. It means untouchable. It means your path is now shielded by the discipline of silence. That's the highest level of strength. So when the world wonders what happened, you'll already be on the next level. While they were talking, you were training. While they were showing, you were stacking. You didn't just move in silence. You won in it. You've moved in silence. You've detached from noise. You've acted without announcing. But there's one final battlefield where all victory begins, and all collapse begins too. The mind. Because your goals aren't just built in the gym, the office, or the grind. They're built inside, in the quiet corners of your brain, in the unseen war of thoughts. And here's the brutal truth. If you don't train the mind daily, it will train you to lose, slowly, passively, seductively, until every decision you make is reaction, not command. Napoleon Hill said, "Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. But belief isn't passive, it's a skill, a weapon. And like any weapon, it must be sharpened. You don't wake up focused, you don't wake up clear, you don't wake up with belief. You manufacture it daily, deliberately, violently." That's the new non-negotiable, mental reps before anything else. Let's destroy the myth that mindset is fixed. It's not, it's forged. And every day you delay mental training, you hand power to weakness, to distraction, to fear. You've spent years strengthening your body, your routine, your habits. Now it's time to weaponize the machine that controls it all, your thoughts. No more passive thinking, only structured programming. Because every day, your mind is being programmed, either by you or by the world. There's no neutral. If you don't dominate it, it will domesticate you. So here's how you train. First, morning command. You don't check the world before you check your weapon. Your mind is calibrated before your phone, before messages, before news. You set your code. Today I am clear. I am focused. I am consistent. I do not negotiate with weakness. I am moving toward war. You repeat it. You engrave it. Then you visualize, not hope, not fantasy, strategic vision. You see the version of you you're building, how he moves, what he says no to, how he finishes. You don't just imagine success, you feel the identity. You wear it before the world sees it. Because once your mind accepts it, your behavior will follow. Belief leads action. Next, mental triggers. You set systems for when weakness speaks, when doubt knocks, when emotion creeps. You don't hope you respond strong. You've already rehearsed it. You fire your code. Example, emotion rises. You say, "This is noise. I don't listen to noise. I move, I breathe, I execute." You say it until emotion obeys, until thought submits to will. Because that's the key. You're not removing emotion, you're retraining its position. It's no longer the driver, it's the data. You use it, but it no longer commands. Napoleon Hill taught that thoughts are things, and those things become realities. You've internalized that. So now every thought must pass inspection. Does this build the man? If not, it dies. You no longer allow negative rehearsal. You don't play out loss. You don't replay failure. You replay power. You visualize control. You inject strategy into every mental loop. Let's talk environment. Your mental gym must be protected. Who are you listening to? Who are you around? What's being said near you? Every voice is either sharpening or softening you. You remove softness ruthlessly. You eliminate doubt by eliminating doubters. You don't explain your standards, you enforce them. Because your mind is not up for public access. You control inputs, you monitor your language, you study the patterns. How do I speak about myself? What do I reinforce? What do I believe in silence? You track it. And when you catch yourself drifting into sarcasm, into low energy, into self-sabotage, you stop. Mid-thought, mid-sentence, you correct, immediately. Because untrained minds delay, but trained minds self-correct, fast. Now let's build mental endurance. It's not about quick clarity, it's about staying sharp for hours, days, weeks. When the fatigue hits, you don't fade, you shift posture. You remind yourself, I've been here before, pressure is not new, resistance is familiar, this is not a problem, it's a pattern, and I've trained for this exact moment. That's mental muscle, that's belief under fire, that's why you win. Because you don't just think strong, you've trained strong. You've created a mind that cannot be shaken because it's not based on circumstance. It's based on structure, and structure never shakes. Let's reinforce your internal code. I build my mind before my mission. I program before I perform. I sharpen before I strike. I move with mental fire. I do not delay. I do not spiral. I do not wait. I direct my thoughts with force. I protect my attention like blood. I think like a warrior. This is not motivation, this is maintenance. You don't wait until things go wrong to train the mind. You train now so when things break, you don't. So when the doubt rises, you answer. When the setback arrives, you smile. When the noise spikes, you stay locked. Because your thoughts are not accidental anymore, they're engineered. You don't wish for peace, you build it, internally, brick by brick, with words, with visualizations, with rituals, with relentless self-command. And that becomes your baseline. People will wonder why you never flinch, why you never collapse, why you never chase. It's because you're not reacting anymore. You've already rehearsed every battle 10 times in your head. You don't enter conflict confused. You enter programmed, calm, ready, dangerous. That's what makes you different. While others read motivational quotes, you recode your beliefs. While others seek hype, you install habits. While others panic, you sit still. That silence? That's not weakness, that's preparation. So when it's time to move, there's no hesitation. You already decided hours ago, in the dark, in the quiet, in the mental gym where real warriors train. And they'll never see that work, but they'll feel it. In how you speak, in how you move, in how you never shake when the heat hits, because now you're not thinking about power. You've built it, internally, permanently.